Hello and welcome to my really dirty garage floor. Today we're going to be doing some sanding and prep on the primer coat for the helmet you just saw me spray in the previous video. I'm not wearing gloves for safety. I'm wearing gloves because what I'm going to do is really messy, as you can tell by the floor. So this is our helmet that was from the previous primer video. You can still see a significant number of layer lines. You can see some overspray from the primer. That's not a big deal. I don't care about that. This cap back here is where the helmet was positioned on the printer. It was printed in an upside down orientation, and this is where the support structure was. So I've wood filled that, I've primed it. It's probably going to turn out fairly decent, but it leaves the rest of the helmet without any kind of support structure. So I really like printing it that way, despite the extra effort involved. We're going to be using just some basic 220 sandpaper, but I've been doing this wet recently. I've been doing wet sanding on it, and I don't honestly know the efficacy of wet sanding primer, but it does have a couple of benefits for me. One, it keeps the sandpaper from getting all gooped up like it would if I was sanding it dry. And two, I think kind of turning this stuff into a little bit of a clay layer as I sand it and smooth it has actually been pretty beneficial for the initial primer layer that I did. So these really noticeable lines are what we're going to try and address today. I have to say the initial print that this came out on was not a very good print. It had a little bit of a stagger. You can see this area right here where the printer basically seemed like it was printing in kind of a wave pattern, and it did that for many hours, and I didn't notice it because I was probably asleep. I wasn't looking at it, and so as a result we've got a little bit of a challenge to get those waves out. And primer doesn't build up very heavily. I am using a Rust-Oleum filler primer for this, which does have a bit heavier build than most primers that you're going to run into. I love it because it's very sandable. It lays down very evenly. I can't feel many of these lines left here. Let's rinse it off a little bit. So you can see some of those raised ridges are coming through here, but to the touch it is smooth in the areas that we've sanded, and I can definitely tell the difference right here. It's very smooth, very not smooth. Now the goal, honestly, for these helmets, all the other ones I've been making, I've been giving away. You know, I've got friends with kids, I've got friends who are Star Wars fans, and I needed to practice anyway, so I was just making them and giving them away to people. This is the design that I actually want to use for my own costume. And I've learned a lot from those previous attempts. So hopefully this one will turn out, I mean, not perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It's only the 11th one I worked on. But I think it's going to turn out a lot better. So that is all smooth to the touch. Right here. So we can still see some lines. I think those will be covered when I do another primer layer. But I can't really feel any. So I'm just going to keep working on this. I don't know if I'll actually have any interesting commentary from this point on. But if you want to sit here and watch me sand for a while, you definitely can. Now I understand why people live stream, though. You know, because this is going to be a fairly boring process. This is going to be, I mean, for me, it's kind of meditative, and I enjoy it. It's a nice day. I'm sitting in the mouth of my garage. I got the door open. There's birds. There's rabbits. There's squirrels. I don't trust the squirrels, though. But I understand why people, when they're doing something kind of crafty, they do like to live stream. Because then maybe they get some questions. Maybe they'll get some input from people. And they can comment on it. Somebody can tell me that wet sanding primer is a really bad idea. And honestly, it might be, but it's working out great for me. So I'm really not that picky. So that waviness that we were feeling here before, I'm not feeling any longer. So the second layer of primer that I did has gone down very well. And I wet sanded very thoroughly the first layer of primer that I did, and it turned out pretty nicely. I feel a little bit of waviness here. I'm not positive I'll be able to totally get rid of it. But I want to address that because when I do a gloss layer on this and then a graphite rub on it, if it's got a reflective finish, that waviness is going to be amplified. If I was doing a flat on this, a flat finish, a flat color, then it wouldn't really be so bad. But I feel like a mirror finish or a gloss finish, it's just going to highlight a ripple. And especially on something like right here on the faceplate, you don't want that. I can feel it diminishing though as I'm sanding. So this 220 I'm using isn't really made to be wet sandpaper. So as I use it, it kind of deteriorates a bit. And it's okay. It's cheap and I have a lot of it. Gosh, now I realize why Bob Ross talks through his paintings. Happy little sandpaper. Did you know he used to be an Army drill sergeant? Can you imagine showing up to basic training and Bob Ross is your sergeant? And I know he probably didn't have the same happy demeanor when he was in the Army. If anything, that's probably why he didn't have a harsh demeanor outside of the Army. But can you imagine him showing up and telling you to do some happy little push-ups? Or get into a formation and breathe easy and relax? You have to forgive the vibrations. I'm using a fairly cheap phone mount. It cost me all of $15. But it's a good phone mount. I like it. It's just not professional. So when you're going through the sanding process, you'll see right here there's some visible lines. And there's some visible lines right above it, right? These lines I can't feel. Can't feel them at all. These I totally can. So it's most important when you're sanding to get the stuff that you can feel. Because visible lines generally can be covered up by your primer layer before you paint. But if you can feel it, you're gonna see it when you paint. So there's a little depression right there. There's little depressions right here on the edge. And I don't feel it anymore. So let's take a look and compare this. Right here where I've sanded, I feel the ridge here. I don't feel the ridges there anymore. I don't feel them down here. So we need to give a little bit more attention to this area of that faceplate. It's easy when you're sanding to sand in the middle and not get the very edges of what you're trying to address. And you can see right here in the inside of this corner, so you can see some very visible lines where I haven't got in there with the sandpaper yet. It's easy to miss that. And I find that's a little bit of the bane of my existence, trying to get in there in little nooks and crannies. I'm probably not going to film the part where I'm sanding inside this ridge because I will curse a lot. And I think I'd like to actually post this on YouTube, and I don't think anybody wants to hear that. There we go. So, take some of this water, flush this off real quick. So the areas I've sanded feel pretty smooth. If we compare that over on this side, you can still see there's that ridge structure. There's some lines here and some more of that ridge structure. So as this was printing, this was a layer. And as it went back and forth, it just put a wave in the surface. So we're going to try and address that as we go all the way around. But I've done this much up until here, so I'm going to try and continue on all the way around the helmet. You don't have to watch the whole thing. Right there on the edges again. And the whole purpose really is to make this thing look metallic. I don't want it to look plastic when it's done. And it's going to be noticeable to anybody who's holding it that it's made of plastic. It's going to be noticeable maybe to people who are right up next to it that it's plastic. But if you're looking at this from 3 or 4 feet away or further, I want it to look like it's a forged metallic helmet. And so we can't have these little ridges and lines and obvious layer marks put into it. And for one thing, they're just hideous. Look at this. Look at that. Nobody's going to believe that's real. So you'll see it's rubbing down to the red plastic, which is perfectly okay as long as the primer is filling out those valleys in between the lines. Then it's okay that the plastic gets a little bit exposed again, because we're going to cover it with primer again. We're going to smooth it, we're going to cover it with primer, and then I'm probably going to rub it down with a 400 sandpaper just to smooth it before I paint. The better you can make your primer layer, the better your paint layer is going to look. And it's way better to spend hours on your primer layer and sanding and preparing than doing a bad job of preparation and then painting it and then either hating it, which I have done with a couple of projects, or finishing it and then having to sand it back down and redo it, which I have also done with a couple of projects, because redoing it takes longer than the prep work would have done in the first place. So you're going to spend the time now, you're going to spend the time later. You might as well spend it now. And then have a product that looks good in the end. These little narrow areas are hard to get in. And it's a shame too, because finish in those areas is going to contribute a lot to the look of it. You know, right in this ridge here, underneath here. That's the kind of thing people might not see when you first walk up or when they first approach you, but they are going to see it at some point in interacting with you. See, that's a lot smoother in there. I can still feel a ridge here. That's this front of the detail. Boy, that's a tough one. That is hard to get into. I'll come back to that when I'm not going to yell at it. So I use an awful lot of water, and I don't really have a problem with that. Water's cheap. I want to keep the sandpaper relatively clean and lubricated. I think it does a better job when it's like that. Because you'll see, I'm getting a little bit of it gummed up in here when it's getting too dry. So I'll start using clean patches of it. And I need to be using more water in between. Woo. That's a loud truck. I used to have a nice loud car. couldn't sneak in or out of anywhere with it. Everybody knew I was coming. I felt terrible because I worked real late when I owned that car, and I'd have to drive into my crowded neighborhood at 1 in the morning with my exhaust blasted. It was probably a dick move. I'm glad I got rid of it. I mean, overall, I miss the car. But I don't miss being an asshole. Oh, see, there I went and used language again. I don't miss being inconsiderate. Let me just say that. I would edit this, but I'm not going to. Whatever I say is just going to get said. And it's going to get posted. And then it's going to get flagged. And then YouTube's going to take me down after only like 5 videos. So this part back here doesn't look real bad. So I'm just going to smooth it a bit. Try to address just some of these little detail spots on the edges. But like I said, the first sanding layer that I did went down really well. I really think it contributed a lot to how good this second layer already looks. I mean, this whole back end was super wavy before. You can still see a couple of remnants of it right in here. But I think we're going to knock that out pretty quickly with this. And I was doing 150 grit yesterday, which is a higher coarse rating. And it was really attacking it. And I almost took it all the way back onto the plastic in some areas. But it was really necessary to get some of the wildly rough areas out. So you can still see a little bit of that wave in there. I want to get rid of that because this is one of those features on the back that if you can make it look nice and reflective, it's going to look fantastic. It's going to look like metal. You might get a nice little mirror shine out of it. People will be following you around when you're walking around at the Comic-Con or Target or wherever you want to wear this. And be able to see their face in the back of your helmet. Their distorted face because it is all curved. That feels incredibly smooth now. So let's check our edges. There's a line here. I don't feel anything else in there. So we're good. I'm going to address this cap part late because it's going to take a lot of effort on that. Now, another thing I like about the wet sanding, once you put water on the surface, you can kind of see the little waves and lines. They're a little highlighted. It's almost like a simulation of putting gloss paint on it. Because I've seen plenty of them where you put gloss paint on and then you start seeing imperfections. So like right here, you can see line, 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 line. And one of the reasons it's so highlighted is because of the water. So we'll be able to attack it. And knock it out very quickly. And there's still a couple little features right there. We'll knock them out in just a few seconds. Look at that. Now the little dark spots you're seeing here, that's that red plastic sticking back up through. That's okay, because it's smooth to the touch. Not getting a ridge out of it anymore. So let's take a look back at this face here. I'm going to get a new piece of sandpaper, because that one was a trooper, but it's done. So we're going to try and attack these ridges all through here, up in here. The faceplate isn't too bad. I can feel it. You can't really see it a lot. We're going to go and we're just going to start down here on the edge and work our way up. Edges are real important. They're real easy to miss. It's very easy to concentrate on the middle of a section. Let's see, here we go. So we're bringing out that red plastic right here where the highest part of those ridges is, but we've got primer built up in between them. So we don't want to sand too much over where those areas are, because we don't want to cut down the primer that's in between the ridge. We want to leave it in the valley. We just want to smooth it out and take some layers of primer down until we can't feel that waviness anymore. And I can actually feel it through my finger when I'm rubbing on it here. The sensation of wet sanding over dry sanding is so much better, because you really connect with the item that you're sanding on. Or at least that's how it works for 3D printing. I don't know, I never really bothered doing it with woodworking, because I don't do woodworking. I am not a carpenter. And there are many, many reasons that's true. Because maybe my sanding technique sucks. I imagine wet sanding wood probably isn't a terribly good idea in the early phases. Especially not using the amount of water that I do. So I can't feel anything there. I don't know if you can see here. A little discoloration where I think we got it close. Feel a little bit of a ridge. Need some more water. There we go, that's nice. Alright, so let's carry up into this section. don't feel any of that ridge there anymore. So now we're going to hit that faceplate. Probably the most important piece of this model is these little face pieces. Because that's where people's eyes are going to be drawn, because your visor is going to be here. The visor is going to extend down the middle. People are going to be looking and trying to look you in the eye. Won't work because, you know, it's tinted, but because this is going to be framing where your face should be, it's what people are going to pay most attention to. So it's got to look really perfect. And because it's a fairly flat surface compared to the curves everywhere else, you're going to get a finish off of it that's going to be more realistically mirrored. Right here. Still see those little divots? Gotta keep working on it. And where are they? They're right on the edge, which is really easy to miss. And now they're gone. So I don't feel any ridge. I don't feel any ripples. It feels nice and smooth there. Now we've still got a decent amount of this to go. Look at this. Look how bad that is up there. Might even want to break out some 150 sandpaper for that. But I'm not going to, because I don't have any within arm's reach. And I'm not going to edit this video and go get some and then put it back together and put a clip on it, because I'm making it solely on my phone. You notice one of the things I'm doing is I'm only moving in a direction perpendicular to these layer lines. And that's because I don't want to start rubbing along a layer line in a parallel fashion, because then I'm more likely to start rubbing away some of the primer that's in a valley. And I don't want to hit the primer that's in a valley. I want to leave that as built up as I can. Those are some deep lines. So if you get a particularly deep line, which this kind of is, like I can really feel that under my thumb. Now, if you've done your best to sand it down and it's not going anywhere, you might have to address it with some wood filler. Wood filler is a pretty common tool for this kind of practice, where we would rub it on, we'd let it dry, then we'd prime back over it. Well, we'd rub it on, we'd let it dry, we'd sand it, then we'd prime it, and it would give us a nice smooth surface. And in fact, that's what I did with the cap part back here. It was very, very rough, and I built it up with some wood filler and sanded it. I'd rather not do that to this section if I can avoid it. I gotta be honest though, the reason I would like to avoid it is because it takes more time. And here I was earlier just telling you not to skimp on time. And then I'm not taking my own advice. So do as I say, not as I do, when it comes to projects like this. So these are some deep lines, but they are working out. I knew they were going to be pretty hefty, so I sprayed a lot of primer on this area. Just kind of hoping it would build up. And it appears to have built up enough, I think. But again, this is one of those areas that's got to look really good because it's right there on your brow. And people are going to be looking at that. And the last thing I want is a big ugly line staring back at them. Because this kind of costume is going to speak a lot for itself because your face will be hidden. So it's real hard to bluff around a lot of it. So see, we've almost got that line totally gone. There's a little bit here. Need some more water. There's a little more here. Boy, the sandpaper is just getting torn up. It's right here at the edge. It keeps getting caught. So I don't know how well you can see it, but we've addressed that deep line. And it's going to look a lot better once it's primed again. So see, we still got those ridges up here, we still got those deep lines on either side, but I'll keep attacking those. God, I've been at this 40 minutes. I should probably wrap this up. I won't take you through the whole helmet. It's probably going to take me another hour or so. But I figured I'd give you a good little demo of what we're doing. We're getting a lot of this detail out. And you'll be able to follow this one all the way through, because I'm going to do step by step when I'm doing my finish sanding, my painting, and then eventually the graphite and polishing steps, which I didn't record on the earlier ones. I got the graphite, I didn't get the clear coat and polishing steps. But I will now. Alrighty. Well, I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much.